You think Copilot is smart because it speaks confidently. The truth, it's a pleasant generalist that stalls the second your question touches your company's rules. You paid for a digital butler, you got an intern with Wi-Fi. Here's the fix. Bring your custom engine agent into Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat. I'll show you the exact 2-minute manifest tweak that unlocks it, plus the guardrails to keep security teams calm. We'll test it against real policies, data loss prevention, regional SOPs, and compliance, so you see speed, accuracy, and fewer hallucinations immediately. Let's upgrade the intern into a specialist. The problem, where default Copilot fails in the real world. Picture this. You ask Copilot, can I share a customer spreadsheet with an external vendor? It gives a polished paragraph on best practices, sprinkles in generic Microsoft 365 guidance, and, spoiler alert, says nothing about your tenant's data loss prevention policy. The average user nods, shares the file, and triggers a policy alert. Yes, they require restarts, pause it. Because Microsoft is not performing magic tricks. Copilot cannot intuit your internal rules unless you inject them. Now compare that to what you actually need. Your security team defined a DLP policy with very specific conditions: customer PII over a threshold, financial identifiers, sharing destinations limited by region, and exceptions for a named project code. Default Copilot doesn't know your exception list. It doesn't know your Project Orion carve-out. It can describe DLP in theory. It can't apply your DLP in practice. That gap is where incidents happen. Let's run a second scenario, regional SOPs. You ask, what's the approved escalation path for a Service2 outage in EMEA after 6 p.m.? Default Copilot happily cites generic ITIL principles, then recommends contacting the on-call team. Fascinating. Which team? In your org, EMEA after hours routes to a regional vendor, not the core SRE rotation. There's a named distribution list, a paging policy, and a 20-minute acknowledgement SLA tied to a penalty clause. The generic answer is not only useless, it's dangerous. The clock is ticking and you're emailing the wrong queue. Third scenario, compliance. Are we allowed to email HIPAA-related updates to patients using Outlook campaigns? Default Copilot will serenade you with reassuring words about encryption and secure handling. It will not recall your legal department's memo that mandates patient notices must go through the patient portal with multi-factor reauth, not bulk email. Again, general knowledge masquerading as authority. If you wanted a TED Talk, you wouldn't be here. Why does this keep happening? Because out of the box, Copilot is optimized for breadth, not your depth. It's grounded by Microsoft Graph and public knowledge, which is the right default for most people, but the wrong default for enterprise precision. Think of Microsoft Graph as the skeleton, structure without your muscle memory. Your policies, SOPs, and compliance interpretations are the tendons and nerves. Without them, the system moves, but clumsily. And the thing most people miss, hallucinations feel helpful. The language is coherent. The verbs are confident, so users trust it. The problem isn't that Copilot is malicious, it's oblivious. It doesn't know your tenant controls, your ROI filters, your data scopes, or the political landmines inside your company. It's not just missing a database, it's missing the spine of your governance. I watched a team waste an hour last week chasing a recommended approval path Copilot fabricated from adjacent truths. They had the right documents, buried in SharePoint, written in legalese, updated quarterly. Default Copilot couldn't follow the breadcrumbs because it didn't know which crumbs mattered. When this finally clicks, you stop expecting the generalist to behave like a specialist and start wiring in the specialist. Here's the brutal audit. Anywhere your question depends on local nuance, exception codes, region-specific SOPs, conditional approvals, trade-restricted SKUs, retention schedules, or compensation rules, default Copilot will either generalize or hallucinate. Both waste time. One creates risk. The truth, until you bring your own engine, your retrieval, your actions, your policies, Copilot will skate on the surface. You need an agent that can parse your policy text, apply your decision tree, respect your tenant boundaries, and answer with citations from your corpus. Otherwise, you're paying for premium tires and driving on ice. The fix is not a motivational speech. It's a 2-minute manifest change that invites your specialist into Copilot Chat. And yes, we're doing that next on the better method, custom engine agents as specialists. Enter the specialist, a custom engine agent. Not a cute plugin, not a glorified prompt, a programmable colleague that speaks your organization's dialect because you taught it the language. The truth? This is how you stop Copilot from freelancing and started practicing policy. What is it precisely? A custom engine agent is an agent you build with real orchestration, Semantic Kernel or LangChain wired into your data and your rules. It plans, calls tools, keeps state, and returns answers grounded in your corpus. Think of default Copilot as the operating room. Your custom agent is the surgeon you credential to work there. No credentials, no scalpel. Why this works is simple. The thing most people miss is that authority comes from 3 ingredients: retrieval, actions, and guardrails. Retrieval gives the agent memory beyond vibes. Actions let it do real work. Hit an API, query a system, generate a report. Guardrails keep it inside the lines. Tenant controls, responsible AI filters, and data scopes so it never wanders into places it shouldn't. Let me show you exactly how the specialist is assembled. First, Retrieval. You connect Azure AI Search to your governed content, SOPs, policy pages, legal memos, DLP, rule descriptions, and change logs. Use hybrid search, vector plus keyword, because your users ask messy questions and your documents use precise terms. The agent decomposes the query, pulls targeted chunks, and returns answers with citations. If you remember nothing else, citations are the antidote to hallucinations. Second, reasoning and orchestration. With Semantic Kernel, you define plugins, skills that encapsulate tasks. Get DLP exception list, resolve regional escalation, check retention schedule. The planner can chain these based on the question. LangChain does the same with tools and chains if you prefer more open architecture. Either way, you get a repeatable flow instead of improv theater. Third, actions. Retrieval is nice, action is value. Your agent can call internal APIs to validate an exception code, check who's on call in EMEA tonight, or verify that a patient notification channel is approved. The shortcut nobody teaches. Tiny boring actions drive massive accuracy. A single validate project code tool can collapse paragraphs of uncertainty into a one-line answer. Now, guardrails, before we continue, you need to understand this or you'll get blocked by security in 20 minutes. Tenant controls determine where the agent can run and what data it can touch. Data scopes restrict indices and repositories by department, region, and sensitivity. RI filters handle content safety and prompt hygiene. Compare that to letting a new hire roam your file shares because they asked nicely. No, you scope them, you monitor them, you log them. Same here. Observability and access boundaries are not optional. Once you nail that, everything else clicks. The agent doesn't guess at DLP. It reads your DLP artifact, checks the exception list, and returns, no, external sharing is blocked for PII unless Project Orion exemption is active. Open a request here. For regional SOPs, it uses time, region, and severity as parameters, then cites the exact page that names the after-hours vendor and the 20-minute SLA. For HIPAA notices, it calls the policy endpoint and replies, use the patient portal, MFA enforced, bulk email is prohibited, with the legal memo link, confidence with receipts. The game changer nobody talks about is ownership. With a custom engine agent, you control the model choice, the retrieval settings, the action contracts, and the logging. You can swap GPT variants, tune chunking, re-rank results, and instrument every step. That's how you get speed, accuracy, and reduced hallucinations without praying to the demogods. And yes, you still want Copilot's UX and discovery. That's where we're headed. The 2-minute manifest tweak that gives your specialist a seat in Copilot chat so users ask one assistant and the right brain answers. You build the surgeon. Then you badge it into the operating room. The 2-minute manifest tweak that unlocks Copilot chat. Okay, surgeon built, now we batch them in. This is the 2-minute tweak everyone skips, then wonders why their agent only shows up in Teams. It's not magic, it's the manifest, the app's passport. Update the passport, the border agent waves you through. Refuse, and you stay in the lobby with the average users. Step 1, bump the schema. Open your app manifest JSON, find the schema reference and update it to version 1.22, not 120, not latest, 122. The truth, Copilot Chat looks for capabilities that only exist in that schema. If the schema is older, your agent can be perfect and still get ignored. You called it the cloud. Incorrect. It's a distributed rules engine, and the schema is how you speak those rules. Step 2, tell Copilot you are in fact a Copilot agent. In the capabilities section for your bot, add the Copilot agent tags. You'll see a capabilities array, include Copilot agents, and if you're bringing your own orchestration, declare custom engine agents. This is the identity badge. Without it, Copilot assumes you're just here for Teams small talk and adaptive cards. With it, Copilot routes relevant chats to your specialist, inside the same experience users already live in. Step 3, conversation starters. Still in 122, you can define up to 12 localized prompts. Use them. Ask about DLP sharing exceptions. Check EMEA after hours escalation. Verify HIPAA notification channel. These aren't decorative. They are discovery beacons that teach users what the agent is good at. Fewer aimless prompts, fewer hallucinations, higher accuracy. Yes, this is how you train humans without making them read a manual. Step 4, actions. The updated schema lets you enumerate richer actions your agent can invoke. Your internal APIs, your policy lookup endpoints, declare them cleanly with parameters and descriptions. Copilot uses this to plan. If you leave it blank, it guesses. When software guesses, people file tickets. Now, packaging. Zip the app with the updated manifest and deploy it the way you normally do. Teams Admin Center or your app catalog. Here's the test most people miss. In Copilot Chat, start typing a scenario your agent owns. You should see your agent offered as a participant or invoked in line based on triggers. If you don't, you either forgot the tags, bot ID mismatch, or your tenant controls are blocking the channel. Yes, Tenant controls exist. No, you can't wish them away. Verification is simple. Ask the 3 scenarios we said earlier. You want answers with citations from your corpus, not generic platitudes. Watch for latency. Schema 1.22 plus the right capabilities cuts routing friction so responses land faster. If it still feels sluggish, that's your retrieval settings, not the manifest. Common mistakes to avoid. Leaving the app scope to teams only, forgetting localization, omitting security attestations and deploying to the wrong environment. Also, don't add every capability because you can. Precision beats maximalism. Declare what you actually support and log everything. Once you nail this, your specialist sits inside Copilot Chat like it always belonged there. Same UI, different brain. And yes, we're about to wrap guardrails around it so your security team doesn't faint. Implementation. Build, deploy, verify, end-to-end. Let's do the end-to-end, no hand-waving. You'll build the specialist with real retrieval and actions, package it with the 1.22 manifest, deploy to your tenant, and verify against DLP, regional SOPs, and compliance. You'll see speed, accuracy, and fewer hallucinations. Not because we prayed, but because we engineered. Build. Part 1. Retrieval that actually knows your rules. Create an Azure AI Search index for your governed content. DLP policy docs, exception procedures, regional SOPs, legal memos, and change logs. Use hybrid search, vector plus keyword, and enable semantic ranking. Chunk documents by headings with overlap so context survives boundaries. Store citations with persistent IDs. Configure enrichment to extract key entities like project codes, regions, severities, and distribution lists because, spoiler alert, your users ask in those terms. Index updates, automate them. A stale index is how yesterday's policy becomes today's incident. Build. Part 2. Orchestration that doesn't improvise. In Semantic Kernel, define plugins. Get DLP exceptions, project code, resolve escalation, region, severity, local time, check notice, channel, policy, area. Give each plugin narrow, testable behavior and return structured outputs, objects, not essays. Wrap Azure AI Search as a retriever with agentic query planning turned on. Decompose complex prompts into subqueries, fan out, gather top K, re-rank, synthesize with citations. Set a conservative temperature. You want answers, not poetry. If you prefer LangChain, tools, and a graph-based agent do the same job, just apply the same discipline. Typed outputs, defensive defaults, exhaustive logging. Build. Part 3. Actions that collapse uncertainty. Connect to your internal APIs, the DLP exception registry, the on-call schedule service, and the compliance policy endpoint. Protect them with managed identities and scope permissions to the agent service principal. Add a tiny boring tool. Validate project code. It returns true or false and a reason. That single boolean cuts paragraphs of hedging into a definitive sentence. The thing most people miss is that 1 or 2 high-signal calls beat 5 pages of speculative reasoning. Guardrails, because you like your job. Enable tenant controls so the app is available only in approved environments. Restrict data scopes. The agent's retriever touches only the indices it needs, no wandering through HR files because someone typed benefits. Turn on RAI filters appropriate for your content, profanity, sensitive terms, and jailbreak defense. Instrument everything, trace IDs across retrieval, tools, and synthesis, log prompts and responses with redaction, emit metrics for latency and hit rates. If security asks for an audit trail and you shrug, you will lose this program in a meeting. Now update the manifest schema to 1.22, add Copilot agents, and, if you're bringing your own orchestration, custom engine agents and capabilities. Define conversation starters, 12 max, localized. Declare actions with parameters and descriptions. Include security attestations if your org requires them. Map your bot ID correctly. Production is not your dev guide. Zip the app with icon, privacy, and terms. This is not busy work. This is the difference between visible in Copilot and why can't I find it. Deploy via Teams Admin Center or your app catalog. Scope to a pilot group first. Operations and compliance champions who will actually use it. Verify tenant-wide settings for Copilot extensibility. If your admin disabled external plugins and agent channels, your specialist will sit outside like a locked-out surgeon. Install for pilot users. In Copilot Chat, your agent should appear as an available participant and as inline invocation on relevant prompts. If it doesn't, check capabilities, app permission policies, and bot messaging endpoints. Copilot doesn't guess your intent, it reads your manifest. Time for the 3 proof tests. 1. DLP. Ask, can I share this customer spreadsheet with our external vendor? Provide a fake path and a project code. Expect, no. External sharing of PII is blocked unless Project Orion exemption is active. Status, inactive. Request exemption here, with a link and citations to the DLP policy and exception runbook. That is accuracy plus action. If it hedges, your validate project code tool is missing or your retriever couldn't find the exception policy. 2. Regional SOPs. It's 1910 CET, SAF2 in EMEA. Who do I page? Expect the vendor's on-call name, the escalation channel, and the 20-minute SLA with citations to the SOP page and an action button to page now. Latency should be crisp. Agentic retrieval with hybrid search and planner beats meandering chat. If it suggests contact the on-call team, congratulations, you routed back to generic Copilot. Check your capability tags and channel availability. 3. Compliance. Can we email HIPAA updates with Outlook campaigns? Expect no. Use patient portal with MFA. Bulk email prohibited with the legal memo citation and the service link. If you get a milquetoast lecture on encryption, your index is wrong or your policy doc isn't authoritative in ranking. Tune re-ranking. Raise weight on compliance source of truth. Measure outcomes. Speed. Compare default Copilot's time to answer to the specialists. You should see fewer back and forths and lower end-to-end latency because the planner pulls exactly what's needed. Accuracy. Sample answers for citations and correctness. Hallucinations. Track answers lacking citations and reduce them over time. Raise retrieval K, improve chunking, add a disambiguation prompt. Iterate weekly. This is software, not a statue. Final checklist. Schema 1.22% Copilot agents and custom. Engine agents declared. Conversation starters localized. Actions defined with parameters. Tenant controls configured. Data scopes enforced. RI filters active. Logs flowing. And 3 scenario tests passing with citations and links. Once that's green, roll out beyond the pilot. Same UI, different brain. The intern just graduated. Proof, DLP policy, regional SOPs, compliance, before versus after. Let's do the side by side. Same questions, same users, different brain. Case 1, DLP policy. Before default Copilot. You ask, can I share a customer spreadsheet with an external vendor? It produces a smooth essay about safe sharing, labels, and general DLP concepts. No mention of your exception list, no Project Orion, no link to your runbook. The user nods, shares anyway, triggers an alert, and now security is babysitting cleanup. After the specialist, same prompt plus a project code. Response, no, PII external sharing is blocked unless exemption Project Orion is active. Current status, inactive, submit exemption at requests, DLP exemption, approver, data protection office, see DLP policy FAVA 3.2 and exception runbook FAR 4.1. 2 citations, 1 action, 0 poetry. Speed is obvious. The agent doesn't negotiate with ambiguity. It calls validate project code, checks the exception registry and answers with receipts. Accuracy improves because retrieval narrows to your indexed DLP artifacts, and hallucinations plummet because the answer template requires citations to ship. Case 2, regional SOPs after hours. Before default Copilot. It's 1910 CET SEV2 in EMEA. Who do I page? It responds with ITIL platitudes and contact the on-call team. Which one? How? Silence. Minutes pass. Incidents age like milk. After the specialist. It's 1910 CET SEV2 in EMEA. Response? Page EMEA vendor ops via EMEA vendor SEV2AT. SLA? Acknowledge in 20 minutes, escalate to duty manager if no ACK. Use page now to send incident template. Citations, EMEA SOP R2.3 and after hours playbook RFR 1.1. The model didn't guess. It read your SOP, used time and region as parameters, and surfaced the exact channel plus the SLA. Speed, 1 message to action. Accuracy, the name distribution list and escalation rule. Reduced hallucinations, no invented teams because the tool verified on-call data. Case 3, HIPAA communications. Before default Copilot. Can we email HIPAA updates using Outlook campaigns? It drifts into encryption, data handling, maybe suggests secure email. The average user interprets that as sure if careful, legal screams later. After the specialist. No. Patient notices require the patient portal with MFA. Bulk email is prohibited. Citations legal memo HIPAA COM SAWA 5 and patient notice policy R2. Link open portal notice workflow. The agent calls the policy endpoint, retrieves the governing memo, and returns a crisp decision with a compliant path. Notice the pattern. Before is plausible narration, after is constrained decisioning with sources and actions. That's why speed, accuracy, and fewer hallucinations show up together. Speed comes from agentic retrieval plus tiny high-signal tools. Accuracy comes from scoping to your indices and verifying with APIs. Hallucinations drop because every final sentence has to stand on a citation. Let's quantify without the hand-waving. Latency. Default Copilot often needs 2 or 3 clarifying turns to stumble toward specificity. The specialist lands in 1 because the planner decomposes the prompt, policy, exception, routing, and fetches exactly those chunks. Token waste shrinks, the clock stops sooner. Correction rate. With default, users correct the assistant or each other. With the specialist, corrections become rare because the automation points to the single source of truth. Incident deflection. Support tickets about who do I page or is this allowed? Decrease because the action buttons take people directly into the sanctioned workflow. Failure modes, because reality exists. If after looks like before, generic answers, you misscoped data or forgot capability tags, so Copilot never invoked your agent. If citations point to stale docs, your index refresh is broken. If latency spikes, your retriever is fishing too broadly. Tune hybrid search weights and re-ranker. And if a user still finds a hallucination, raise the citation threshold. No citation, no claim. Same UI. Different brain, that's the proof. Operations, lifecycle, governance, and scale. You built one specialist. Now act like an adult and run the program. Lifecycle first. Version your agent like software. vNext in dev, promotion to test, then production via release tags. Componentize topics and actions so you can reuse them. No copy-paste policies. Automate evaluation. Regression prompts for DLP, SOP, and compliance. Fail the build on citation drift or rising latency. Governance. Scope identities with least privilege. Tie indices to data classifications and regions. EMEA agent doesn't see APAC records. Turn on audit, trace IDs, action logs, retrieval sources. Security wants attestations, document models, actions, data flows, and RAI filters. Publish risk notes for every new capability. Scale. Treat adoption like product. Seed conversation starters by persona. Monitor question coverage and add actions where users stall. Cost control, cap tool invocations, cache retrieval, right-size models. And yes, set tenant controls by environment so experiments don't hit payroll. Key takeaway. Copilot becomes reliable only when your specialist agent brings retrieval, actions, and guardrails into Copilot Chat. If this saved you time, repay the debt, subscribe, tap follow, enable notifications, and watch the next deep dive on automated agent evaluation, scheduled like a well-behaved con job. Proceed.